we are absolutely delighted to be here with the next episode of Forward Thinking. My name is Guy Windsor-Lewis, founder and CEO of Locale, and I am delighted to be here with Susan Freeman, partner in Mishcon de Reya. So is that partner of the whole of Mishcon de Reya, or is that a partner in the real estate? Because it's unclear from your bio.
Partner in the firm.
Partner in the firm.
Within the real estate department.
Well, that's very impressive. Because I was saying to one of the guys at work, the first time that Mishcon de Reya came to my notice was when I think Princess Diana engaged them as the divorce lawyers for her case. And then
it's true.
It is true.
It was shortly after I joined the firm.
Oh right, then.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And before then, Mishcon de Reya wasn't as well known.
No.
As a brand. After that, the whole world knew about Mishcon de Reya.
They did.
And it was quite difficult to get people to talk about things that didn't relate to the divorce. So I was there trying to build up the real estate profile, and we had all these television cameras camped outside the office. And when Auntie Julius walked in, and Anthony was acting on the divorce, all the little red lights went on. I walked in, there was total disinterest. So it was a little bit dispiriting. But I mean, even now, when sometimes I talk to people and they'll say, they'll still talk about the divorce. Yeah. And it's how many years ago? It's over 20. Well, well over 20 years ago.
Yes, I think it was. It was well over. It's over 25 years ago. I think it is now, almost 30 probably. But so interesting. We'll come back to your role at Mishcon and how you started on that, because one of the things which I think is always quite interesting and people want to know about is your background and how you got to be the person you are today. And I did hear somewhere, and I have pre-warned you about this, is that actually you didn't want to be a lawyer at all early doors. So it was a sort of baby Susan. What did you, when growing up, what did you want to be? What was your aims?
I wanted to go to art school.
Right.
I also thought that I wanted to go into marketing, business development, but I went to university, and my parents were very keen that I should study law, and there wasn't anything else that, I didn't even realise that university was going to be fun. I was going to stay at home and go to university, and I thought it was just like an extension of school.
Okay.
So in the absence of anything else, law seemed to be a reasonable thing to do, but I think I planned to change to sociology when I got there. But I was having such a good time, I never got around to changing. And then when I came home, I thought, right, now I can go to art school. And my father said, well, why don't you just do your articles, just qualify, and then you can do what you want to do.
Right.
So,
and keeping you on the perceived straight line, so to speak, as opposed to
he obviously thought
it was crazy hedonistic life of an art student.
Yeah. So also I possibly wasn't that talented, which could have been an issue. So I thought, okay, I'll look for articles, and I was at law school. I met somebody who was at a firm in the West End, and it was probably about the only firm that I would have been happy to go to. It was sort of equidistant between Selfridges and Phoenix, opposite Claridge's, and it seemed like fun.
Okay.
The only problem was they specialised in real estate, and at the time, I was more into Roman and comparative law, that sort of thing. But I thought it looks like such a great place. I'll do it. So I ended up in a firm where the real speciality was real estate, which at the time I didn't know anything very much about.
That's quite a big jump from. So what the art was that fashion? Because you always strike me as being incredibly well dressed.
Well, that's very
and
kind.
well turned out.
Very kind.
And you turned out this afternoon in a leather jacket, which is with studs and things, which is quite cool.
Which I then took off.
Which you've then taken off.
Okay.
But we can see that later. So was it fashion that you were interested in, or was it drawing, or was
it fashion, some drawing? I mean, just everything creative. And I suppose I felt I wanted to do something creative, but. I also had I must have had an aptitude for law, because I was offered partnership at the firm I was articled in, actually before I was qualified.
I heard the story.
Oh, you did hear the story. And that made it a little bit more complicated because I thought I'll qualify and then I'll go and do something else. And it was quite a big thing at the time, you know, as a woman, relatively young, to be offered partnership in, you know, a top West End firm. So it was very nice to have it offered, but it was a huge responsibility because I actually didn't know very much at that point.
Well, you wouldn't, would you?
No, and you know, you obviously have to show that that you can do it. You've got the confidence to do it. So that sort of stopped me in my tracks.
And was that on the real estate side then? So was that you sort of setting up or being a part of the real estate department?
That was real estate. I mean, the firm was all about real estate. We acted for all the big names, big developers at the time. So the sort of transactions, I didn't get the opportunity to cut my teeth on, you know, straightforward house purchase and sales. I was doing like the first phase of Broadgate, and
oh wow, okay.
Well, exactly.
So nothing too small then.
No, it was, you know, quite
big,
serious,
chunky,
chunky deals. So you know, not really the sort of things you want to make a mistake on.
No.
So it was, you know, it was straight in at the deep end.
And did you feel you were a little bit like a fish out of water at this stage, or did you feel, no, I can...
Well, I
that
felt
may be a little bit rude, sorry.
Yeah, I felt a little bit inexperienced,
right.
But I had to prove that women could do as well or better than their male counterparts. So I worked really, really hard, and I suppose I'm grateful for being given that amount of you know, independence at that point, because I think now, I mean, there's no way you would, you know, allow a newly qualified lawyer out dealing with those sort of transactions on their own. And the partner that I worked with would literally disappear for a month in the summer. You know, you'd be left with a holiday note, but there was absolutely no way you were going to phone or get in touch. So it really was sink or swim. And
did you have a mentor at the time?
Well, that was him.
That was him, but he wasn't. He wasn't always around.
No, exactly. So it's character building.
Yes, it is definitely character building. So that was the first firm. Yeah. And were you there for a little while?
I was there for quite a while, and the firm merged with a city firm, and it really wasn't quite what I had in mind. And then the opportunity came up to join Mishcon's, and you know, I really liked the partners here. I really liked the ethos of the firm. I mean, the only downside was that it was I was used to being in Mayfair, and I didn't really know Holborn at that time. But I have come to really appreciate being here.
So how do you balance that obviously very strong creative element of your sort of within your DNA with being what many I think perceive to be quite a dry, you know, lawyer for real estate? You know, that's not exactly, doesn't strike many people as being colourful or flamboyant or...
Well, I suppose I've channeled...
How do you challenge that?
I've channeled my creativity into the sort of things that you mentioned at the beginning, in terms of, you know, getting people together, you know, to do deals, you know, trying to be a little bit more creative about that. And, you know, real estate is such a fascinating sector to be involved in, and there is so much change going on at the moment that, you know, there is quite a lot of scope for creativity. Yeah.
So in terms of the transactional side, that's not really what you do anymore, or are you more involved in sort of managing the department and that sort of stuff?
It's more business development now. And you could say I've done my time doing transactional work. And I think other people are better at doing it. So it's sort of, you tend to sort of concentrate on the things that you are better at. And
I think maybe 5 years ago I'd have looked at you slightly weirdly and gone, really? But my role has now changed. So we're a business that's, you know, grown 15-20% year on year for since 2005. So I've been doing this, and I always thought I'd be very involved on the business development side. But actually nowadays, you know, it's a lot more sort of marketing, but more sort of holistic business development, and that sort of trying to create bridges with sort of various companies and things. So yeah, I also don't do any sort of granular sort of, you know, transactional stuff as you would say.
Do you miss it?
Yes and no. I miss the thrill of the chase, I must admit, but I sort of lived that sort of through the teams that we have, you know, the customer success teams and the strategy and growth teams that we have, and the various people, the guys in those teams. So I'm still very involved in it. I still speak to them, you know, 3-4 times a week. So I know what's going on, but also I accept that, you know, at a certain stage, you know, if you're at the top of the chain, you have, on the top of the ladder, you have a different role to play, and that's as important, if not more important, in a sort of holistic way than just doing the individual deals. Because I can bring a client, and that client can sign 10 or 15 bits of work to us, and we're very much on recurring revenue. So that will last the business. That will be a benefit to the business over many, many years, as opposed to just signing one deal and then you move on to the next. So it's a different role, but it does take a bit of getting used to, I must admit. I don't know, have you found the same sort of thing?
Well, no, because I think it happened quite gradually.
Right.
Because about 5 years after I joined Mishcon, I decided, I've spent my whole career doing something which I hadn't intended to do in the first place. Maybe I would step back and see what was going on in other sectors.
Yeah.
So I actually left for a year, went to London Business School and did the Slow Masters programme there.
What's on my list?
It's on your list. And it was, somebody had said, oh, you should do this course, this looks really interesting. I don't think they appreciated quite how intensive
strategy and leadership
it was. Yeah. And it's effectively, it's an MBA course, but it's sort of telescoped into 1 year. So instead of having 2 years to do it sort of in a relatively relaxed, you're doing it.
So it's not a year off.
Oh God, no. And
it's full on.
I don't think I think if I'd appreciated quite how difficult it was, I may have thought twice.
Yeah.
And I remember my last day in the office before I went, I bumped into Anthony Julius, my colleague, and he said to me, well, that's very brave. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, a friend of his had just done it and said it was the most difficult thing that they'd ever done. And they say it's like trying to sip water from a fire hydrant, because you get so much knowledge thrown at you. It's very, difficult to actually absorb it. And it also, involved working with people from all over the world, from different backgrounds, public sector, private sector.
Wow.
And I think, that was one of the most important parts of it, actually, realising that people speak the same language, but they mean something completely different.
Yeah.
And there was also quite a lot of travel. I had a couple of weeks in Bermuda on a consulting assignment. We all went to Shanghai.
Must have been tough.
It was very tough. It was.
Obviously you're working hard, but.
Well, it was quite tough, and I'd said, make sure I do some of the financials, because I love, the interviewing, and we were interviewing a lot of people. I said, to the rest of the team, make sure I do some of the financials. Don't let me just. And I ended up just doing the interviewing, and then all 60 of us went to Shanghai for a week, which and
interesting.
It was really interesting. And then there was a trip to Boston, and this is
and
all.
Were you going as a group and quite isolated, or were you actually being introduced to local councillors and developers and things?
In Shanghai, we were very much as a group, and it was just fascinating. We went to visit various businesses outside of Shanghai, and it really, really interesting. But all this had to be fitted into the one academic year, and now looking back on it, I'm not sure how I did it, because there were exams and all sorts of essays, and then my thesis I did on change, because I was really sort of focusing on change that was going on in real estate. And I did my thesis with CBRE, which involved sitting in their offices for I think about 3 months, interviewing everybody, from top right down to people in the post room, which was fascinating.
So we're just talking about the change in your thesis on. So when you refer to change within that, and we will come back to your other things, but I just thought I'd pick you up on that. So when you say change within the real estate, what do you mean by change in the real estate?
Okay, so one of the things I focused on as part of the Sloan Masters was just change generally, and some change within within businesses. And
okay.
It just so happened that CBRE at the time were going through this process of change. They were being taken over by an American corporate, and they were changing the way they operated, and it just worked very well with what I was focusing on. But I think I focused on change because I've always found change quite difficult, and I thought it might be useful to get some sort of perspective on how to make change work, and it's been quite useful in terms of what's then happened in the real estate sector, because when I finished the Sloan Masters, it was a time where customer service wasn't something that really resonated in real estate. Brand and how you use brand again. Real estate was really behind other sectors. So I started writing a little bit for Property Week at the time. They asked me to write, and I said, fine, but I don't want to write about legal issues. I want to write about, other issues that are affecting, real estate and the built environment now. So.
Wow. I remember. It was interesting because 2005. Started doing this, and I think one of the first projects, we did a lot of work with DTZ, a lot of work with Knight Frank initially. He really picked up the sort of the tech gauntlet and ran with it in the early days. There was a guy called Will Monk, I don't know if you remember him, sadly passed away a few years ago, but he was really good, and he picked it up and ran with it. And I remember going Waterhouse Square, which was the old Prudential building, red brick building, not a million miles from here actually. And we did, and there was a female building manager, and I think we were doing maybe, we had 60 or 70 different buildings we were running at the time, and in London, all male, and she was the only one who was female, and it was really refreshing because she was talking about things like concierge service and front of house and how important it is to talk to tenants, and she was the only one on that level. And so she loved our platform because that's exactly we're like one of the things is like a comms platform. So she was using it really, really busily and getting really, really good engagement with not necessarily the occupiers, because it wasn't a B2B to C at that stage, it was a B2B tool, but really picked it up and ran with it. When you talk about change, the other thing for me that is really frustrating, and we'll come on to this because you're heavily involved in the tech side as well now, is trying to evolve change and trying to speak to either the agencies or the developers or the landlords or the funds about the evolution of change and that whole sort of B2B to C bit, and the adoption of technology as well. Do you is this one of your sort of do you see yourself as a knight in shining armor coming to the rescue of this, or how do you think the whole real estate technology relationship is going? I'll leave it there.
Yes. I'm not sure. Yes,
trying to be a bit political there.
I'm not sure.
Or apolitical.
I'm not sure I see myself as a knight.
Okay.
But I'm always interested in things that are new, or some disruption. And so when we all started talking about prop tech a few years ago,
yep.
I thought this is really interesting, it's amazing, and we've been doing quite a lot here. We run a lab for tech startups, and we sort of bring early stage companies in, and we work with them, and that's been fascinating because we can help them improve their technology by working with us, and also it's educational for the lawyers here because they get to see different ways of doing things. So all the way around it really works, and I think COVID and lockdown did help, because suddenly we were totally reliant in some cases on technology. to be able to link up with our teams. You know, if it had been, if COVID had happened, you know, just a couple of years earlier, I mean, there's no way we would have been having online meetings, online panels, you know, linking up with people across the world. I mean, it just wouldn't have happened. And then, you know, all the apps, obviously, that people were using to communicate with, you know, people that they work with. So I think in a way it was helpful, and we're still doing it, you know, virtual meetings. Although I had assumed that there would be a huge leap in technology, and the sort of technology that we're using for virtual meetings and the hybrid meetings,
but it hasn't.
Was and I think part of it is cost, isn't it? Yeah. Because to, you know, have super technology and, you know, feel as if you have got people in the room with you when they're actually, you know, online, you know, it's pretty expensive. Yeah. Yes, so I've sort of tried, and also during lockdown I was doing, I can't believe I did it now, I was doing a weekly blog for Property Week on everything new and interesting that had happened during the week. So wow. There was sort of quite a lot on, you know, new technology and what people were developing. So I think it's happening, but, you know, people always say that the real estate sector is not, you know, at the cutting edge of change. People feel more comfortable with, you know, doing things in a way that they've always done things. So there's a bit of resistance, and you know, I think people also a bit apprehensive of things, you know, like artificial intelligence and you know, possibly affecting their jobs and that sort of thing. Mm.
It's interesting because we at one stage, and again we've been doing this for quite a while now, so it's going for 20 years. And I think they are, you know, they are quite resistant to it. I just think it is change, and unless I think they see a real benefit of having technology in there, then the majority will go, actually we're not going to go down that route. And then even then, when you do get agencies or portfolios saying yes, you've then got to, there are so many different stakeholders involved in that decision making process. Is that we then thought, okay, well, why don't we set up a change management business? Because actually that could run really well in parallel with what we're trying to do, because we could engage with the company to say, okay, and yes, you want to do this. So the guys in the ivory towers are saying, yes, we see the need and we want to adopt technology and cascade it down. But also they seem to have very little idea of how to actually do that. So it's the actual change, instilling change and evolving change within the businesses as well. So it's not just saying, right, here's the technology and away you go. So we've ended up getting customer success teams, customer services, outreach teams to then make sure we're helping each of those stakeholders along each of those different levels, down to the building managers and the front of house people, to make sure that they actually know how to use it and purpose it and understand the benefits from it.
I think that's essential. I remember having conversations during lockdown with companies that had actually bought these systems. They were there, but people weren't using them. Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right.
And then I think you then add turn and churn for the last 2 years, and there has been a lot, you know, we call it the great reshuffle and all this sort of stuff. Is that then people who you've trained then leave, and then you're left with someone who may not have done a handover, and then suddenly you're in a situation where you're almost back to scratch.
I think one of the things that people actually now realise is that data and collecting data and using data in the right way is absolutely essential. So I think technology that involves data is something that people accept. I mean, even if they don't accept other things. But then there was an issue about sharing data and the agents sharing data, and obviously how far it's anonymised. So there's a way to go, isn't there?
I mean, there is a huge way to go, and I think it's good. Don't get me wrong. I guess I am whinging a little bit about it, but I'm not whinging that much, because obviously we run a successful business on the back of it, so it can't be all bad. But I just think most people in my shoes would sort of be a little bit frustrated at the rate of adoption of technology. and also the AI. I completely get that, but you go to some buildings where there is no digital footprint in that building, negligible digital footprint in that building, and yet we've got at the other end, we've got people in property talking about AI and how fantastic, and you're going, hang on, you got people who are just about Neanderthal times here, sort of just about inventing the wheel, and you've got people here who are flying rockets to Mars, and you go, really? How does that? How do they equate? And you're all in the same sector.
Well, that's the beauty of the sector, isn't it?
It is.
So diverse.
It is broad and wide. Yes, it is definitely a wide church. So you mentioned that doing the Sloan year, opened your eyes to other sectors.
It did, and I had a completely open mind. I went off to do this course. I did something that most people doing the Sloan don't do, because most people there had either sold their businesses or they'd left what they were doing, and I actually did remain a partner here. So it's meant to be, it's transformational. It's something that people do when they want to completely pivot their careers. And the thing I think I learned really was that I'm passionate about the real estate sector. And I looked at what was going on and obviously learnt from other sectors, and there were sort of certain opportunities I could have followed, but I just didn't want to. So I came back, but my role really changed then, and it became more of a business development role. And that's probably, at that point, the transactional work that I've been doing had gone to other partners. So I took some of it back, and I was still involved with clients, but it became mainly a business development role.
And so you seem to have an awful lot of roles. So within Mishcon, but also I put down here numerous boards as advisors, Seaforth Land, Work Life. You're on the DEI board of Propter Week, plus you're vice chair of the BPF's tech board, plus you chaired Future PropTech Advisory Board, plus non-board numerous bids. Where do you find the time for all this?
It's things sort of ebb and flow, and in fact the BPF role has no longer exists, because the BPF came together with the UKPA. So our job was done. So it was very much sort of an exploratory group, talking about what was going on, and it has now reached its natural conclusion with the two entities coming together, which is great. But in terms of the business improvement districts, I've been involved since the beginning, because in fact before I even went on the Sloan course, I went on a study tour to New York, which was led by Pat Brown, if you know Pat Brown, and she took a group of us over to see what was happening in New York, what the business improvement districts were doing, and we were taken around and shown sort of various areas, and we felt that this was something that we could import into the UK. So that's where it started, and now obviously there are hundreds of business improvement districts, and they play a very important part of what's going on in cities.
So the one thing I didn't realise, because I was saying I've sort of recently met and interviewed Jace Tyrrell from Opportunity London, and so Opportunity London is basically just this enormous bid, basically, to try and, as he said, we're more like he said, see me more like a sort of a concierge department, sort of welcoming people in and sort of selling the benefits of and getting people to invest. So
of course, Jace, before he left us and went to Australia for a couple of years, was running the new West End Company bid. And the one I'm primarily involved with is the one here, which includes Holborn and Clerkenwell. And I run the property group. I'm also on the board, but when we came back from this New York study trip, the Holborn Business Partnership, which was the predecessor of the Central District Alliance here, was one of the first sort of experimental bids that was set up.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah. Interesting. So did it, because I'm sort of reasonably new into the whole bid world, so was that something that started in the States then? that sort of
very,
concept.
very much. But,
okay.
In New York, it was very much property owners. So it's property owners that got together and funded it. And when we got the legislation for business improvement districts here, it was felt that it should be for the occupiers. So it's only relatively recently that we've had property owner bids. So New West End Company was one of those. And also Heart of London bid, but there are now sort of more and more that are being set up for the owners as well.
Okay, and the one in Clerkenwell, because we can just promote that sort of.
Central District. So
Central District.
So we are hoping to set up a property owners bid here as well.
And the main vision mission would be. Are we talking about refurbing? Are we talking about
it's
net zero? Are we?
It's everything that makes an area, I suppose, more desirable.
Okay.
So it starts with things like making sure the streets are properly cleaned, making sure that it's secure, making sure when people come out of Holborn Station, there are people to greet them, point them in the right direction. It's things like organising, events, concerts, things that make people want to come into the area, whether it's for work or, as tourists. I mean, this area is interesting because it's always regarded as Midtown. It's between the West End and the city. And there are so many fascinating, sort of interesting heritage sort of sites, buildings here. So we're just, behind Lincoln's Inn Fields at the moment. We've got Sir John Soane Museum, we've got the Inns of Court, we've got the Charles Dickens House. So there's a lot, but a lot of it is sort of unsung. But it's sort of working with the businesses and people who live there to just make the area better.
Okay.
Because you know what it's like. You come into an area and you see litter sort of on the streets, and you sort of think, oh, well, this looks a bit grubby.
Yeah, if it's not lit very well, there's a whole safety and security, personal safety and security thing.
A lot of working with local authorities, and we know that local authorities are under quite a lot of cost pressure at the moment. So just making sure everything works and bringing businesses together that operate.
And do you? Because that was one of the things that came up with Jace, is actually trying to get everybody singing off the same hymn sheet and going and waving the flags and going down the right. Do you find that most people get that sort of holistic view and go, yes, that is a good thing, we will literally buy into this?
Well, it sort of helps when people can see. So, for instance, part of the bid's remit is landscaping and trying to make areas more pedestrian friendly. So, if you walk around the area now, you'll see, areas, where there are trees and sort of seating areas and planting. And, in the past, London's possibly lacked that, and it's all been sort of very much about cars. And, now it's more about pedestrians and just making this part of the city just more pleasant. And I think more so now because people have a choice. They can say, well, I can work from home or I can come into the office. Well, if you come in, there's going to be a concert, or over Christmas there're going to be, things going on, concerts and that sort of thing. It makes the whole thing more sort of convivial.
Appealing.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I agree. And is there also a sort of a subliminal thing of retrofitting and making sure that there's no sort of dead space and that sort of stuff?
Well, retrofitting, I suppose, in due course there may be guides for people as to what they can do and what they can't do. But the bid really brings the people, that the occupiers and the property owners together, and everybody has their own idea of what the important things are to do. So there is there's a lot. And you're actually looking at it now. You wonder how people managed without the bids, because I think they're going to be called upon more and more now to maintain standards.
Yeah.
Because if the local authorities haven't got the money that they had to maintain areas, then there's going to be more pressure on businesses to help fund that.
Yeah. But it also makes sense, because actually if you're living and working and running a business in that area or owning property in that area, doesn't it make sense to actually reinvest and to get those people to reinvest in the data rather than leaving it to a council that, as you said, doesn't have the funds right now to do this.
Well, and it's interesting because obviously some of it is quite long term.
Yeah.
So it's more for the property owners than perhaps for the occupiers if it's if they're longer term projects. So really ideally you want everybody involved.
Going into it. Interesting. So we can't go without talking about Property She. So was this your idea, or was this put to you as a good idea, or?
Well, it came totally out of the blue from a lady called Natasha Guerra, who runs a flexible working company called Runway East,
right,
which is doing very well. And I'd met Natasha, and she just wrote to me out of the blue and said she'd done some research, and people were beginning to do podcasts, but there weren't any women in real estate doing podcasts, and she'd listed various podcasts with links, and basically said, I think you should do it. And I think at that point I didn't know what a podcast was, but I sort of had a look, and I thought, well, she's done all this research, maybe I should do it. So I just organised to go along to it was the Jazz FM studio in Soho,
okay,
and just set up my first interview. But instead of just easing in slowly and doing it with somebody that I knew,
no.
Well, I decided Fifth Wall looked really interesting. This big VC fund investing in prop tech, and Brandon Wallace, the founder, was coming to London. So I said, well, how about it? I'll interview you. So he arrived in the studio, and he said, oh, have you done many of these? I said, no,
you're my first.
And we had a wonderful conversation. It probably went on for too long, and it just went from there. So that's how it started.
So do you know how many you've done?
It's round about 100.
Okay.
And we started off recording in the studio, which was great fun. And then lockdown came, and I got this call saying, well, you're going to have to stop the podcast because studios aren't taking anybody in. And I said, it's not going to be put off by this lockdown, we'll do it on Zoom. So that's what we did. So we just moved on to Zoom, and that actually did have the benefit of me being able to interview people from other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So we did that, and it continued during lockdown. I thought maybe I'll carry on doing it for a year or so. I thought, how many people could I possibly interview? And we are still we're still going, and it's I just find it so interesting. I mean, the opportunity to just ask people questions, find out about them, and also really to introduce the listeners to people that they wouldn't necessarily have come across. And then what is really good fun is sort of introducing my podcast guests to each other. So I did an interview with Hannah Chapat, who is young, she's in her 20s. She set up a platform for student accommodation, and she was saying she'd really like to bring it into intergenerational living. She thinks that would work really well. So I got her together with Honor Barrett, who runs Birchgrove.
Yes.
And they are now doing a project together.
Brilliant.
So, podcast matchmaking.
Wow. So do you have a sort of a description of your classic person, or do you just look at your network and who's in the news a bit and then point the finger and then go after them?
It's quite subjective.
Okay.
And it's loosely around influencers in real estate and the built environment. But that sort of extends, when I find somebody who I think would be really interesting to talk to. So, for instance, Thomas Heatherwick, the designer, I caught Thomas just at the beginning of the of lockdown, so he couldn't get on a plane to go to any of his projects around the world.
Right.
So we did a podcast from his bedroom, where he was speaking from his bedroom. And that was great. So and it's a lot of people get in touch and say, have you thought about interviewing this person or that person, which is great.
Okay, so you have a list of of targets.
So right, yes, running list of targets. And I mean, the sad thing is the ones that, you know, I haven't done. So the late Tony Pidgley had said, yes,
right.
we were going to do the podcast, and we were going to do it around his birthday. And I'm just so, you know, it's such a shame, because it would have been great to have the essence of Tony Pidgley. So, I mean, the idea is that there is a back catalogue of all these characters that, you know, if you're involved in real estate, it's quite useful to, you know, to know about them, because these days you're not necessarily going to meet them.
Have you ever been turned down? I thought you were going to go no. Really? Yeah. More than once?
No, it happens. I mean, first of all, there's some people who, well, for various reasons, don't want to put their head above the parapet, and I can understand that. So it does happen occasionally. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Haven't you been turned down?
No. But I like you. I think we're quite subjective in terms of people we know, and there's some existing. You know, we've met 2 or 3 times before, so we were sort of angling for a yes here. But yeah, no. But I can see that. I can absolutely get that. People wouldn't necessarily want to, as you say, raise their head above the parapet.
And some people are actually
quite, would they?
You know, some people are quite nervous about it.
Yeah, and I think it is a bit can be out of their comfort zone. I mean, we talked about quite a lot of what you do. You seem to lead an incredibly busy life. What do you do outside of work to let your hair down, or just decompress, breathe? Are you into your gardening at all, or are you?
I like the idea. I like the idea of it.
Do you have an array of dogs? You live in the middle of, you know, some.
No, well, I do spend time in the New Forest. In fact, I spent lockdown in the New Forest. So
I remember seeing lots of pictures of horses. Okay.
Yeah, lots of ponies. So
Do you ride?
Not so much anymore. So I stopped when we got a dog, and I haven't for a while, and I'm now a bit sort of apprehensive about it. So yes, so I spend time down there, but I find it very difficult to switch off, because I want to know what's going on. So it would be unusual for me not to be, you know, having a look at Twitter, having a look at, you know, LinkedIn, looking, you know, at the sort of Property Week and States Gazette, you know, as they come through. So I probably I really turned off actually over Christmas, because I lost my phone.
Okay.
So I was in Malaysia and left my phone in the airport lounge as we were sort of travelling between destinations.
I mean, lovely, but nightmare.
Well, it would have been all right, because they found it and they sent it to me, but I felt I've got to report it, you know, to the tech team here in case it, you know, goes astray.
Yeah.
And they did something to it that it seemed to be impossible to reverse. They said, oh, it's fine, you can just switch it back on again. But absolutely nothing would switch it back on. So I literally, you know, I had over a week with no phone. So I did.
It's kind of a blessing in disguise, really.
Suppose so.
You don't seem that enamoured with it.
I spent a lot of time sort of trying different ways of getting it switched on again. Absolutely nothing worked. Yes, so I spent time in the New Forest. I like going out to eat with friends. I like going to Bruce Springsteen concerts.
No. So we got a.
What have you got against Bruce Springsteen?
How many times have you seen him?
Quite a few times. So last summer, twice.
Yeah.
Twice. So Barcelona and Hyde Park, and then we are going to Milan shortly. To see him. Okay. Well, are you a fan?
Huge. Some of the guys in the room are going to be laughing their heads off about this.
Oh.
So we even named the dog after. The dog is called Bruce, but his real name is Bruce Springsteen.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
I've seen him probably 12, 13 times.
So have you seen him on? Did you see him on this last tour?
No, No, because we couldn't get away and it conflicted with something else. Okay. But I've seen him down in Cardiff. I've seen him in, I saw him in Wembley Arena.
Yeah.
When he did the more country style. Which
yes, I think I probably, when he was wearing Winsiet shirts and things. I don't like that very much.
And there were about 15 people on stage all playing different instruments. I took my twins, because I have 4 kids and twins were the last, and I surprised them. We went to Milan and we ended up walking and seeing him at the San Siro, which was amazing.
Okay.
So that was.
So I'll tell you something you may or may not be jealous about. So when we were in Barcelona last summer, we were meeting friends from Los Angeles, and they manage Stevie Van Zandt, who's the lead guitarist. Now, I didn't know anything about Stevie and his acting career and everything. And we got there and the friend said, "Oh, really good news, Stevie's coming to have dinner with us." And I was saying,
wow.
Well, no, I wasn't. I was saying, well, what are we going to talk to him about? And who is he? And he was amazing. I'll actually send you the photograph.
Okay.
He was, just such a great guy and just so, nice, interested, and we had a great evening. I then watched Lilyhammer, and because I'd not watched it, I hadn't realised what a great actor he is as well.
Yeah.
So so there's some Bruce Springsteen coming up shortly.
Brilliant. You don't think he's losing his touch a bit?
Oh no.
Okay.
Absolutely not. I mean, no. So we were Barcelona. I think there were 60,000 people there. I mean, Barcelona was swamped, and it was quite the occasion because the Obamas were there, Steven Spielberg was there, all the
it was
people.
Quite a do, wasn't it?
Oh yes, yeah. So we were like going around the Barcelona sites, and they were there as well. But the the Spanish are, a huge amount of local fans.
The Italians were, they wouldn't let him off the stage, and he was there. All the lights were on. We had the guys in the high vis jackets coming on, saying we're going to pull the plug, and he was like going no, and the whole San Siro stadium was like going play.
Did you go to the Hyde Park concert where Westminster did pull the plug?
No, but I heard. My brother went. And I said, I'm not surprised, because literally that's what he does. It was crazy. I first saw him in 1985 in Wembley, the Born the USA tour. And it was just, he was on for, and we've been to a few gigs and things, and you think, an hour and a half, 2 hours, Rolling Stones, 35 minutes, literally. I'm joking, of course, but kind of not. And then Springsteen comes on, he's there for 4 hours, and you're going, what is this? It's just like, do they charge us more on the way out? It was just unbelievable. No, incredible. The energy is incredible. So I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah. So you're not going to get tickets? I'm not. Never say never to these things. Okay. Never say never to these things. But but no, big fan, must admit. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. That was pleasure. Learned a little bit more about you. And it makes a change to be interviewed. I was going to say, how does that feel? It's quite strange, actually. Yes. Yeah, to be asked the questions rather than answering them. All right. Well, Susan Freeman, thank you very much indeed.